Bill and Paula Prince are a part of our musical family, and we are so happy to have them here this morning. Bill and Paula, the stage is yours. We have a cartoon that's up on the screen right now. A cardinal and a bluebird are on a branch of a tree, and the cardinal says, "Can I help you?" The bluebird says, "Huh?" Cardinal, "You've landed on my tree." "Your tree?" Cardinal, "Yeah, I inherited it from my grandpa who stole it from some squirrel." Bluebird, "That's stupid. You can't own a tree." Cardinal, "What if I sold it to you at a very reasonable price?" The bluebird thinks to himself, "Wow, my own tree. How often do we have a big T truth that we know in our hearts? You can't own a tree, and then mindlessly change our minds. We displace it with a construct, an idea that we come up with, but doesn't have any evidence. In this case, I have the right to own nature. Religion is one way of making meaning, of creating constructs to help us understand and to give us a purpose in life. At its best, religion gives us a moral compass as we make meaning, often based a sacred text or particular historical figure. Unitarian Universalism uses conscience as a moral compass, but conscious in relationship to a community and responsible to a shared set of values. Sometimes we humans inherit an old construct and discover we need to deconstruct it because we realize it isn't actually a big T truth. Often this happens while many other humans around us keep believing. Here are a few examples of truths that I do not believe, but many others still do. Humans have dominion over nature. European culture is the pinnacle of civilization, and everything else is backward or primitive. It's the job of some humans to meet my needs because of their lesserness, their gender, color, education level, or economic class. This deep deconstruction is deep soul work. It calls us to step out of a sense of self-confidence and into a place of confusion, vulnerability, discomfort, and eventually transformation. But it is possible to do so because you do it together. We are not alone. Come, let us worship together. I guess I'm trying something different this morning. I thought we'd start with our call to worship. So if you will rise in body or spirit, we'll sing our call to worship. Welcome, and welcome to another beautiful Sunday at Buckman Bridge Unitarian Church. As we say, BBUC. I am your worship leader, Claudia Marshall. My pronouns are she and her. Welcome to this liberal religious community. This church is very important to me. It is an oasis for the mind and the spirit in times like these, and I hope that it will be that for you. If you are visiting with us for the first time, we are glad to have you with us. We want to get to know you and allow you to know us. Hopefully, when you came in, you stopped by and you got a name tag so we can call you by name. If you're visiting with us again, we're glad that you came back. Please feel free to ask any questions or anything, and we'll be, so glad to answer them. Or if we can't answer them, we'll find somebody to help you out. Okay, we will join for fellowship with coffee and snacks in the back of our church or in the garden. I hope the service will feed and strengthen you. Welcome to our service. Just like other churches, we have hymns, songs of joy. Will the singers come forward as we open our teal hymn, and we will rise in body or spirit? Do we have? Okay, yeah. Open the teal hymn, and we'll sing Building Bridges. All right, that's the first time I tried. We tried, huh? We're still building bridges. Okay. All right. At our church, we are free to explore what we believe. And we created this covenant, which is a promise of what we will do to listen to one another. And it is listed in your order of service. Let us recite it together. We covenant to engage one another with honesty, kindness, and respect, to value diversity, seek understanding of our differences, and practice gracious accountability with care, love, and empathy. We make these promises to those who are here and those yet to come, so that we may be a safe, welcoming, and beloved community of acceptance, learning, and transformation. Okay. I'm going to ask Donna Zimmerman to come and light our chalice, which is a symbol of our resilience and perseverance to sustain us while... Oh, I have the wrong part, Donna. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm doing the chalice lighting. I'm crazy. Okay. Grace Meets Us Where We Are by Gretchen Haley. There is nothing you need to bring with you to be here. No right, beliefs, or proof of citizenship. No eternal optimism or clarity of conviction. No boundless courage or endless expertise. You do not need to know what brought you here or how you will solve that problem you are turning over and over in your mind. Your bills do not need to be paid, and your checkbook can be a mess. Your children may have been up half the night, and your hearing aids may not be working, and your knees may be creaking. You do not need to be already perfect or even halfway to belong in this circle where grace meets us where we are, but does not leave us as it found us, where love resides in each of us, yet somehow is more than all, where life still pulses and rages and heals and transforms, greeting us and this day anew once again. Thank you. It was really lovely. Thank you. Okay. What We Say Yes To by Erica Hewitt. The offering we take each Sunday isn't just a stale habit. It's an opportunity to recommit to this place and to this people. Our offering is an affirmation, a yes. When we give, we say yes to something we value. With our gifts freely given, may we say yes to the values of our faith. May our offering help us practice Unitarian Universalism within and beyond our congregation as tools to empower our mission. It's time to ask you for your help to support and sustain our ministries and committees that this church helps. Our tradition is to pass the plate, so whether you use the QR code or use the envelope, everyone, when you pass the plate, make sure you touch it, as it is a symbol of passing it of love among our neighbors. I'll now ask if Chuck Smithers and Jim Wood will come and forward and help take the offering, and afterward we will rise and sing number 123, Spirit of Life. Before I, introduce you to our video speaker this morning, I have a little reading. And this is called A Recipe for Resilience. They say this recipe has been tweaked over time, so it just is necessary. Sometimes it yields more servings than anticipated. Sometimes it needs a bit more of this ingredient or that. It comes from generations who have gone before me, and I've added my own flavoring along the way. It's by Margaret Weiss. 1 part courage, 2 parts tears of failure and doubt, 1 part deep listening, 1 part each of both silence and laughter, a dash of trust, a pinch of wonder, a heaping scoop of naps and snacks. In a separate bowl, mix together family, friends, and those who challenge you to be your best self, those with whom you disagree. Add slowly to the larger pot. Add a bay leaf, well, whatever it is a bay leaf does. Let it simmer for as long as you need, which is often longer than you realize or anticipate. Keep the heat at an even temperature, hot enough to cook throughout, but not so hot it burns the bottom. It can be served at room temperature, warm or even cold if necessary. Serve alongside your favorite soft blanket, dog, cat, or other soft item. Make often. Share with others. Hold on to the leftovers. You'll need them after a long day that challenges your soul. Reverend Renée Ruchotzke has served as a UUA Congregational life consultant since 2010. She spends half of her time expanding the UUA. I hope you enjoy this video message.
My father was born in a little Eastern European country called Latvia. Like the Ukraine, it shares a border with both Russia and Belarus. And my dad grew up speaking both Latvian and Russian. As a little boy, he experienced a Russian invasion by Stalin in 1941, then a German invasion and occupation by Hitler and the Nazis in 1942. Then in 1944, there was a second Russian invasion that resulted in over 40 years of occupation behind the Iron Curtain. Luckily, my 8-year-old dad, his 2-year-old sister, my grandparents, and my great aunt fled to Germany, where they were given food, shelter, and work. The rest of my Latvian relatives lived under the terror of a totalitarian regime. That is, if they weren't killed or sent to Siberia. When I was growing up, my grandparents and dad never shared stories of what happened with the Russians, just a few oblique comments about how hard it was. I did know that my grandfather lived in constant fear that a KGB agent would track him down and kill him, even in a quiet little neighborhood up in Michigan. Later, when I was an adult, I learned that he witnessed one brother being shot by Russian soldiers while another brother and cousin were sent to Siberia. A few years ago, I traveled to Latvia to learn about my family roots and experience Latvian culture. The one thing that struck me was that nobody smiled in public. Nobody smiled. Americans have been exposed to hundreds of stories about Hitler and the Nazis. I really had to dig to find out about the experiences of Eastern Europe under Stalin. It is horrifying. It is so horrifying that I had nightmares around the time of the invasion of Ukraine. I knew the history of the Stalin-created famines in Ukraine in the 1930s. The Soviets confiscated every scrap of food from the family-owned farms and refused to give them any rations. The starvation was unimaginable. They say that the countryside became bare of any vegetation and eerily silent because anything that moved was eaten. What I also learned from my deep dive into life behind the Iron Curtain is how living under a totalitarian regime was dehumanizing. I recently watched a 2021 documentary titled Homo Sovieticus that illustrated the impact 30 years after the USSR collapsed. It wasn't just being under constant control and surveillance. It was also being forced to deny and denounce one's history and identity. Even a suspicion of one's loyalties could cause utilities to be mysteriously shut off or a job lost for no apparent reason. People learned to trust no one, which led to isolation, loneliness, and disconnection, and no smiling. This is why the current political moment in the US is so frightening to me. I notice the markers of totalitarianism. Totalitarianism has a very specific meaning that can help us understand not only the dangers, but how we can respond to it. We start with authoritarianism, a government where a person or small group of people are in charge without having any accountability to the people being governed. This accountability piece is crucial, and we'll come back to it. Totalitarianism is authoritarianism that doesn't just stop at the government. Totalitarianism adds in some kind of ideology. It then uses that ideology to control most aspects of human life, such as the education system, what books are available, the arts, the sciences, and the private life morality of the citizens. We have a whole class of political leaders and billionaires who have embraced totalitarianism, containing at least three ideologies that I am noticing. The ideology of white supremacy, where Black and brown humans have less value. The idea of patriarchy, where women's value is based on what they give men, and anyone who doesn't fit gender roles is a problem. And the ideology of parasitic capitalism, which is based in extraction and exploitation rather than in creating things that have their own value. But what frightens me the most is an emerging ideology that is a Frankenstein's monster that combines the worst of all three of these ideologies: Christian nationalism. Let's be clear, there is nothing in the teachings of Jesus that resemble what is coming out of the mouths of these men and a few women. They have rewritten the Gospels to glorify guns and conflate themselves with God in Jesus. They are embracing the wolf of totalitarianism while masquerading in the sheep's clothing of Christianity. One way to think of Christian nationalism is how it echoes the belief in the divine right of kings, but with some self-appointed strong man in charge instead of the heir of the previous king. Whenever you have a person or a group who claims God is on their side so that they can seize power, it's a theological red flag. Unchecked power gives license to the worst human impulses: to enslave, oppress, deport, imprison, conscript, rape, kidnap, or steal from others. We are experiencing a time where the theological red flags are multiplying. But there are a lot of shades of gray before they turn to red. It's the gray shades where people can still reconsider their opinions. This is where we can make a difference in this current political moment. A lot of people think of themselves as good Christians, but that can mean a lot of different things, especially depending on what church they go to or what news shows they watch. As Unitarian Universalists, we do not tend to ground ourselves in the teachings of any particular faith tradition. Many of us came out of a Christian tradition, but left because we had issues with the theology or some hypocrisy or inconsistency. Only a handful of UUs really have an understanding of the complexities of Christian theologies, so we can't authentically debate heresies. There are still plenty of real Christians who still believe in the blessings of the meek, or to turn the other cheek. These Christians will continue to preach and advocate for their more compassionate understanding of the gospel, challenging the bumper sticker and t-shirt theology that twists the gospel into Jesus, guns, babies, liberty. And the saying goes, we don't have a horse in that race, even if we do have a favorite. This is the point where I shift gears and start talking about what all of this means to us as Unitarian Universalists. Christian nationalism is a real threat, and we need to have our own response. We UUs have had our own conversation about the center of our faith nationally that touched on some of the same core issues. Even though there were thoughtful disagreements, I didn't see any head-scratching t-shirts or bumper stickers. Let me start by saying that one of the most beautiful things about Unitarian Universalism is that we don't have to tie ourselves up in knots whenever we come to a new conclusion about something. This is partly because we don't have to conform to an ancient text. Our history is full of questioning. Do we have to practice Holy Communion to be a church? Do people have to believe in God to be a member? Should women be ministers? Should earth-centered traditions like paganism or Wicca be listed alongside Christianity and Judaism? How do we understand the privileges of whiteness? And what does that mean to how we live our lives? As Unitarian Universalists, to help guide us when we struggle with questions such as this, we develop our own articulation of our faith. And every so often we renew that. And we just did so at the General Assembly of 2024. Then we adopted 6 core values, shared values that we use to guide our faith. These core values are generosity, justice, interdependence, equity, transformation, and pluralism. And at the center of these values is the core value of love, that each one of these values should use love as a touchstone. Article 2, which is part of our UUA bylaws, includes new pragmatic purposes that will guide the work of UUA staff like me. These purposes give a little more clarity to the mission of the UUA: to assist congregations, to support and train leaders in spiritual development, to heal historic justices, and to advance UU values in the world. But then the purposes take a bold step by naming in print what many of our prophetic UU leaders have been saying. Our purpose also includes transforming of the world through liberating love. There's that word love again, a love that liberates, a love that calls for freedom from, not the related but very different word of liberty that we are seeing on t-shirts and bumper stickers along with eagles and guns. Liberty is an expression of the freedom to. Let's unpack the differences. Freedom from oppression, not freedom to oppress. Freedom from economic exploitation, not freedom to make the maximum profit. Freedom of expression, not the freedom to silence the expression of others. The proposal also reiterates our covenant of support between congregations. Instead of naming specific sources, which were transient and never seemed to include the breadth of faith and ethical traditions we draw from, it names the more permanent qualities of the sources that we draw from: freedom, reason, hope, and courage. Again, these are particular expressions of faith that build upon a foundation of love. Freedom that wishes freedom for all. Reason that is curious and open to changing one's mind rather than held defensively or like a weapon. Courage that serves the common good rather than the individual ego. Then Article 2 takes another bold and some felt controversial statement. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. So far, so good. Then it continues. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Remember when I said we'd come back to the topic of accountability when I was talking about authoritarianism, where people are in charge without having any accountability? We have seen what happens when leaders are able to act without transparency or accountability. We saw it with Stalin. We have seen it in the tragedy of how the Catholic Church handled sexual misconduct among their priests. We are seeing it in our criminal justice system. I see accountability as holding the line between two different understandings of freedom. One is all humans enjoying freedom from harm, harm from the myriad of oppressions and isms, and the freedom to do whatever one wants, no matter how much those actions harm others. Accountability ensures that love is grounded in mutuality and respect, not on giving without receiving in return. Accountability encourages each person to take responsibility for their actions. Accountability discourages codependent behaviors like pity or overfunctioning. Accountability also calls us to keep our promises, to work through our mistakes, and to accept an olive branch of reconciliation when it is sincerely offered. When I am talking religion in the public sphere, I always look for or ask about where are the lines of accountability? When someone's accountability begins and ends with the divine, I raise an eyebrow. I once had a boss tell me that since I was a person of faith, I didn't need a raise for the extra work I was doing because my reward would come in heaven. He was enjoying the freedom to help himself to my labor. Then I enjoyed the freedom from not working there anymore and found another job. As a congregation, accountability is actually a key part of how we have historically approached our theology. Our Pilgrim and Puritan ancestors saw the corruption of the bishops and the presbyteries, of how they didn't stay true to the teachings of the Bible. In our congregational polity, the individual conscience, in conversation with others in covenanted community, is the way we practice accountability. You actually can't believe anything you want. You need to test it with your fellow sojourners on the path of faith. One person can't just make decisions for the whole community, not even the minister. Instead, we empower a group of leaders to look at the big picture and to talk things through. And for the big decisions, we expect that the whole community will have a voice. Nationally, in our denomination, things work much the same way. We have small groups writing curricula, collecting worship materials, editing hymnals. But for the big decisions, like updating our covenant, principles, and purposes, we convene a national conversation and eventually vote. I am grateful that our faith has decided to do the hard work of working with the tension between individual rights and community responsibilities through our new wording in Article 2. As I said earlier, this deconstruction is deep soul work. It calls us to step out of a sense of self-confidence and into a place of confusion, vulnerability, discomfort, but eventually transformation. We can do so because we are doing it together. We are not alone. Amen and blessed be.
I'd like the singers to come forth again. We're going to sing our hymn. Number 131 in our gray hymnal. And there are 3 verses, so we're going to sing them all. I'd like to call Debbie Jones, who I was supposed to extinguish our chalice. Our closing words are by Ursula Le Guin. We live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable. So did the divine right of kings. Any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings. Resistance and change often begin in art, and very often in our art, the art of words. Namaste, Ashe, Amen. Blessed be.